Friday the 13th, Hate, Kill, Repeat by Jason Arnott. Chapter 20. The door crashed out its frame and thundered to the floor, narrowly missing Chuck Whalen. His chefs cowered as Jason Voorhees entered the kitchen. Whalen was already dashing to the room's opposite side, cursing the fact that Jason was blocking the double-door exit. Why hadn't he run straight through them? Jason moved quickly. Another 2 big strides brought him across the whole room to Brian Kelser, another trainee chef. Seizing the terrified man with one hand, Jason reached up to grab one of the butcher's knives, which hung in a shiny row on the wall. Trapped on the far side of the kitchen, Whalen and his remaining 2 chefs shouted in protest, while looking desperately around for something to save their own necks. Whalen wielded a meat cleaver while Skipper held 2 small pans of boiling water. Leah held an electric carving knife that buzzed in his hand. Jason powered the wide blade down into Kelser's forehead. It gouged through skin and skull alike, swiftly turning his lights out. Jason flung Kelser to one side. The young chef folded over his own workstation, the knife still embedded in his skull. The killer returned his attention to the various sharp objects on offer. He began to walk along the row, prompting the chefs to move along the other side of the long table that divided the kitchen lengthwise. Snatching a small knife from a stretch of marbled work surface, Jason whirled around, sending it flying through the air. It struck Leah in the chest and he gasped, falling sideways, still clutching the carving knife. Skipper shrieked in agony as the whirring blade sliced through his left knee on its way down to the floor. He dropped the pans which hit the tiles, the contents of one striking Leah full in the face. Skipper seized his ruined kneecap, cartilage oozing between his fingers. Beside him on the ground, Leah's face sizzled and bubbled. His coke high somehow enabling him to focus, Whalen looked behind his stricken workmates and saw the entrance to the freezer room. It was a huge metallic door, which they always called the bank vault. A small, square, thick window was embedded in its center, allowing you to see how much stock lined the shelves, without freezing your ass off in the process. An idea struck Whalen. Every nerve end in his body felt alive. This was a matter of do or die. Turning around, he deactivated the lock with trembling hands and pulled open the door with a concerted, vein-popping heave. A gust of freezing air struck him. Whalen grabbed the agonized Skipper by the arms and pulled him backward into the freezer room. "What the fuck you doing, man?" he yelled. "Saving the hotel," said Whalen distractedly. He wasn't looking at Skipper as he spoke. He was watching as Jason stalked around that long kitchen table, quickly approaching them. He was now holding the kitchen's biggest meat cleaver. Over a foot tall, it was so polished that the overhead light shone brightly from its surface. This was the vital moment. Whalen knew it. Would this fucker take the bait and enter the freezer, or would he? Time to find out. Whalen held the freezer door open. Inside, Skipper was dragging himself along the floor trying to get out, his face a horrified mask. As Jason stomped toward the door, Whalen released it and darted around the table again. The door was designed to close automatically, but slowly. That way idiots were less likely to lock themselves in. Jason swung to face Whalen. "Oh, fuck," he thought. "I'm dead. Get out of these double doors." Then Skipper wailed from inside the small room, effectively signing his own death certificate. Jason's head jerked back toward the freezer chamber, just as the door was about to close. Jamming one fist into the gap, Jason easily prized open the portal and disappeared inside. Skipper hollered blue murder. Seizing his chance, Whalen ran over and pushed the big door shut with a wheeze. Through the window, he could see that Jason was paying no attention. He was holding Skipper up against the only patch of wall that didn't have shelves, and chopped into him with that huge blade. Bloody froth piled out of the kid's mouth and his eyes rolled skywards, as though his spirit was only too keen to leave its shell. Whalen activated the lock and heard heavy bolts glide across, between door and frame. This damn thing was heavy duty. No more noises came from inside. Skipper was history. Whalen took an involuntary step backward as Jason's mask filled the freezer window. He heard thumps and clangs from within. Jesus, he's trying to knock it down, Whalen thought. But he can't, can he? Thinking as fast as his mangled mind would allow, Whalen backed toward a wall-mounted telephone. Stabbing 2 buttons in rapid succession, he speed-dialed Walt Bluestone's pager. Then the chef stood by the double doors, waiting and watching, as the monster in the freezer room doubled its efforts to escape. All around, wrecked corpses littered his spotless kitchen. "Time out, it's recap time," said Sheriff Claymark. He and Ryger were sitting on one sofa, Halo and Tom on the other. Ryger's shotgun was propped up against the wall beside him. "You were chased by Jason Voorhees, and a couple called Norwood and Penelope tried to kill you? Is that what you're saying?" Halo nodded, trying to quell her contempt for the disbelief in Claymark's voice. She fixed him with hard eyes. "That's exactly it." She groaned. It was just as she told Tom. They weren't going to believe her. Why had she bothered? Why hadn't she just gotten the hell out of town, maybe taking Tom with her? "Sounds about right to me," the sheriff said finally. "The FBI have captured one of the couple, and the other was just discovered on the bank of the lake, dead." "Good," murmured Halo. Ryger gave her a surprisingly hostile look. "Was that anything to do with you?" "Hey," interrupted Tom, frowning. "That's a great way to talk to a woman who survived 3 killers in one day, man." Ryger ignored him. Tom glowered, balling a fist under the table. "I told you," said Halo. "Norwood and that dead bitch grabbed me. Jason appeared and I ran off. After he threw Norwood across the bank, I just wanted to live." She stood up, her frustration now boiling over. "Now can we please establish whether my goddamn sister is alive or dead?" "They're working on it, over at the station," said Claymark, intending to reassure but failing badly. "They're trying to contact her at her home address." "Hey, can we look in the Thawns room here in the hotel?" asked Tom. If they... "Call reception," Claymark told his deputy. "Find out which room they were staying in." April held her head in her hands, leaning forward like air sickness victims. The tears on her face shone different colors as disco lights revolved overhead. "I just can't believe he did that to me, right in front of everyone in the fucking company." Sitting at a table next to her, Greg stroked the girl's back. "That guy's a jerk, April. At least you know that now. You can move on, huh?" She convulsed, letting loose another agonized sob, which evaporated amid the sounds of MC Hammer. "I'm so fucking embarrassed, Greg. All I want to do is go to my room." Greg continued to work her back, feeling the strap of her bra through the thin fabric. "Okay, if that's what you really want to do, we could do that." April sat up straight, shrugging away his hand. "I meant alone, Greg." She eyed him suspiciously. "You wouldn't be trying to hit on me minutes after my boyfriend ditched me, would you?" Greg held up his hands. "Hell no! I just meant I could walk you up there." He fidgeted in his seat and took another glug of beer. He watched the hot young things on the dance floor, women he had been fantasizing about all year long, shaking their stuff. If April wasn't willing, then perhaps Busty Raynor from advertising might be. "So, you want me to go up?" he asked. April shook her head and wiped away more tears. "I don't know what I want, Greg. Get me another drink, would you?" Greg rolled his eyes as he got up to hit the bar again. So now he was stuck with the girl who wasn't interested. So no other woman would approach him. The sooner he could get April tucked up in bed, the fucking better. Not for the first time, Wayland wondered why he was still in the kitchen. The killer's masked face had remained in that window, looking straight at him for the past 5 minutes. Were there 2 eyes or just the one? He had no intention of getting close enough to find out. Every now and then, 2 mighty, simultaneous thuds sounded as the imprisoned Hulk slammed fist against it. As much as Wayland was trying not to look at the corpses, he was desperate to avoid eye contact with his captive. It was like trading stares with a crocodile at the zoo, which you knew damn well was dying to gnaw on your bones. Crash! Wayland jumped like a gazelle. The double doors had burst open behind him. Walt Bluestone walked in, glassy-eyed, still buzzing on the coke. What is it, Chucky boy? Got another line for me?" The remaining words seemed to tumble from the security chief's open mouth, down to the blood-slicked tiles. His eyes became cold still as he surveyed the carnage. 2 dead bodies. Wayland was thankful that Walt couldn't see the 2 in the side corridor, plus Skipper in the freezer chamber. That might induce cardiac arrest in the man. Then Bluestone's pistol was out and flashing in the glare of the kitchen lights. It was in Wayland's face. "What the fuck?" he protested as Bluestone glowered along the barrel at him. "What the fuck happened in here?" Bluestone barked. Wayland could see that his finger was on the trigger, itchy. Why did he have to choose this night of all nights to give the guy some blow? "Hello," said Wayland pointedly, desperately trying to rein in his sarcasm. It would be highly unwise to push Bluestone over the edge. He gestured toward the freezer door. Bluestone got his second big shock of the day as he saw the bloodied hockey mask behind the glass. "You've got to be fucking kidding me!" he breathed. Lowering the gun away from a grateful Wayland, he took a step toward the freezer. "Careful, Walt. I've seen what this motherfucker can do. He's strong as all hell, man." This information didn't seem to sink into Bluestone's head. He was still staring at Jason, as though disbelieving the evidence provided by his own eyes. "Who the hell is this?" he said, now straighter. "How the hell should I know, man? I sure as fuck didn't invite him over to sample our entrees." "You called the cops?" No, I thought I'd call you first." "Hell, I don't know what I thought." Wayland realized he was welling up. He never usually felt emotional while high on blow. It must be masking a whole world of pain. He cupped a hand over the lower half of his face and leaned back against the wall. "How'd he get in there?" asked Bluestone. Wayland composed himself a little. "Well, Skipper..." "Skipper fell inside and, God, he followed." "Skipper's in there?" interrupted Bluestone furiously. "Oh my God, we've got to get him out of there." Jesus, thought Wayland. Walt and Skipper were friends. Why the hell did I tell him Skipper was inside? "I'm pretty sure he's dead, man," he added. "That bastard killed him. I heard screams and they stopped." Bluestone wasn't listening to reason. He had raised his gun to the window, pointing directly at Jason's head. "Okay, motherfucker. I'm gonna open this door. One false move and I swear that mask won't offer any protection against the bullet, which I will put in you." Fear swept through Wayland like a whiteout. "Don't do it, Walt, please. Look, I'm calling the cops. We'll let them deal with it." Wayland turned around and snatched the phone from its cradle. Bluestone said, "Our team's more efficient than those damn bumpkins. If Skipper's in there with this prick, I want him out now." "I told you Skipper's fucking dead." Bluestone wasn't listening. Still pointing the pistol at Jason, he raised a walkie-talkie to one ear. A crackle of static. "Sir?" "Kramer, where the hell's Fenton? Can you get everyone over here to the main kitchen room? Clear out any restaurant guests, too. We have a cold red situation." "We sure will if you let that thing out of there, Bluestone," said Wayland. Bluestone shushed him and continued to speak into the device. "Immediately, do you hear? We have dead men in here. Yes, you heard me right. Get here now." "Okay," chirped Wayland as Bluestone broke off the line. "See you on Monday, dude." In a flash, the pistol was pointing at him again. "Oh, no, you don't. The cops will need to speak to you about what the hell happened, so stay put." "Fuck you, man. Don't point that thing at me again." Fire blazed across Bluestone's face. "I'll do what the fuck I like. Now call room 1010 and let the sheriff and his hard-ass, lard-ass deputy know what's happening." The white layers were beginning to form over Jason's considerable surface area. His mask had become crystallized beneath the latticework of ice flecks, which spread and solidified. His exposed ribs and spine carried similar marks of frost. The blood on his long blade had already frozen hard. Behind him on the ground, partly buried beneath a toppled mountain of burger buns and cellophane, Skipper's pale face was also starting to gather ice. His open wounds glistened as the cold ate away at them. Jason had no interest in the contents of the freezer, nor in the man he had butchered. He merely stood observing the two living, breathing vessels outside, as they threatened him and argued. He had all the time in the world. One man in the background was holding a phone to his ear. The bigger man was pointing the gun again and shouting through the glass. More men were entering the room behind him. 4 of them, all with guns. Child's play. The biggest of the walking, talking bags of blood and bone was reaching for something on the other side of the door. Familiar sounds muffled and mechanical. The sounds that Jason had heard when he was first imprisoned in here. The door was about to open again. Kill, kill, kill. In room 1010, the phone rang loud and clear. The handset rattled on its cradle and a red light flashed on its electronic display. No one was there to hear it. It stopped dead. Wayland slammed the phone back on its cradle and ran out of the double doors. Bluestone and his men didn't see him go. They were too busy staring at the behemoth, which was slowly lumbering out of the freezer room. Age-old joints cracking in its right arm as it raised its glistening blade. Bluestone took another step back, his men repositioning themselves to accommodate him. They were all painfully aware of the ricochets which might result if all 5 guns fired at once in this relatively confined area. Nobody wanted to shoot, but this thing just wasn't following orders. "Last chance, motherfucker!" yelled Bluestone, with all the stony authority he could muster. Yet the hysteria in his voice unnerved his men. "Stop moving or I'll kill you! Stop moving or die!" Jason took another step forward, raised his blade some more. Bluestone fired first, the blast loud as an atom bomb, drilling through his and the others' eardrums. The bullet punched into Jason's chest, where his heart should be. The giant took half a step backwards, then a whole step forwards again. Shocked by the lack of response, Bluestone fired again, and so did his men. Muzzles flashed to his left and right. Spent bullet shells were flying. Small explosions of dark green slime burst out of Jason's chest. One slug struck his forehead, having burst through the very top of his mask, chipping and blackening it. Like a beast goaded one too many times, Jason launched into a frenzy. His blade slammed downwards, cleaving Bluestone's skull in half, right down to his neck. Blood splattered the security chief's men as he went down. One guard broke off from the pack and vanished through the double doors, his face contorted in fright. The others fired again repeatedly, experiencing what they imagined must be combat shock. More oozing slime marked the bullet hits. Jason staggered back further this time, falling against the freezer door's bulky frame. Immediately heaving himself upright, he made a vicious sideways swipe which removed most of one man's head, slapping it wetly against a white wall. The remaining guards roared in horror as their second colleague collapsed. As Jason forced himself upon them, frenziedly swinging the weapon and carving off chunks, ears, arms, shoulders, a flap of scalp, they fired wildly, blindly. 2 consecutive bullets hammered into gas ovens with brightly burning hobs. Another split open a pipe that ran up the length of one wall. Whoosh! There was a low primal boom like hell's own fireplace coming alight. Within seconds, the kitchen was consumed by rolling orange flame. Chapter 21. "You know, Thawne, old buddy, I think I've got it all figured out." "Well, please do enlighten me, Ed." Daimler's brow was dripping with sweat, much of which was probably down to alcohol. He finally had the new tire in place, after a painfully difficult job. Either he was fatigued or this damn thing was warped. In the front of the car, Van Stat was talking to someone at the sheriff's office over the phone, explaining the delay. Tightening the lug nuts, Daimler glanced in through the side door where Thawne was still sitting. Of course he was. Where else would he be? He grinned at the seething killer. "Yep, I've got your profile down. I know the real reason why you killed all those innocent people." Daimler watched Thawne carefully. The captive was rolling his eyes. "Innocent? You'd hardly call all that detritus innocent. Sexual deviants, filthy drug users. Not one of them was an upstanding member of society." The FBI agent laughed, shaking off a stray drop of sweat that had infiltrated his left eye. "And you, Thawne? What are you?" A pause. "Another rhetorical question, Ed," Thawne sniffed. "Damn right it's rhetorical. You, Norwood Thawn, are a stone-cold killer. Whatever happened to thou shalt not kill in that mind of yours, huh?" Thawne's smile actually succeeded in chilling Daimler as he spoke. "Except..." Daimler tightened the wheel another notch. "Except," he repeated, unimpressed. So that's the best you can do. Your get-out clause, making exceptions for people you consider unclean. Ever heard of a little guy called Adolf Hitler? No reply. Well, let me tell you something. I think it's all an excuse. Want to know the real reason why you hate those people so much? Thawn was studying the roof of the car, disinterestedly. The man's arrogance infuriated Daimler. He was sorely tempted to shoot him in the kneecap right now. Flip his attitude 180 degrees. If Van Stat hadn't been there, he would have done it already. That girl was such a goody two-shoes. You hate them, he continued, because they're free. You were brought up by that extreme father of yours with a whole list of things you weren't supposed to do. Brainwashed beyond the regular tenets of religion. I tell you, I've got no problem with religion when it's regular and caring and raising money for charity. But your father, by all accounts, he was something else, wasn't he? Thawn was looking at him again. It was a raw, hateful look. So, when you reached a certain age, you must have looked back on your life and seen all the missed opportunities, all that repressed fun, and you hated anyone who had lived a normal life, screwing like rabbits, smoking the odd joint, drinking themselves sick. Daimler could see he was pulling wires, changing gears in Thawn's head. And that's why you really hate them, isn't it? You wish you could be them. You'd always wanted to act on that resentment, but you needed a spark. Meeting a like-minded sicko like Penelope was the trigger. You shut up! Roared Thawns suddenly. You piece of scum! Whoa there, Mr. Stones and Glass Houses, grinned Daimler. Looks like I'm right, huh? Got you all riled up. Ed, called Van Stat from the front. Just spoke to the sheriff's people. They found a woman who claims to have been attacked by Jason and abducted by the Thawns tonight. Thawn raised an eyebrow, his face still hot with temper. Then he smiled again. She won't last long if Jason's after her, he said. Be quiet, Van Stat told him. Besides, she's with the cops at the Phoenix Heights Hotel. She'll be safe now. There's our lead witness, said Daimler triumphantly, slamming his palm against the roof over Thawns' head. Like gel food, Norwood? 'Cause you're going to be eating a bunch of it. Norwood Thawn chuckled. As I said, my poor deluded agents. She's a dead whore walking. The hotel's fire alarm sounded again, as Jason Voorhees thundered through the kitchen's double doors. Flames clung fiercely to his shoulders and what remained of his clothing. He continued his stride as though they were mere irritations. Behind him, the kitchen was an inferno. Fire lapped vigorously at the ceiling, constantly fed by the gas supply. Blackened heaps of flesh cooked steadily on the floor. A huge, billowing fireball seemed to follow Jason, setting the double doors ablaze and blooming along the corridor behind him. At the other end of the corridor stood the security guard who abandoned his colleagues. He leveled his gun at the steadily advancing demon and squeezed off a couple of rounds. Most missed Jason entirely as his hands were shaking. Jason shrugged off the 2 bullets that had sunk into his torso and walked on, still on fire. Once again the guard turned and fled. Halo Tom and the 2 cops stood in the corridor outside the Thawns' suite. Damn fire alarm, mumbled Tom as the klaxon continued to sound. Must be malfunctioning. How many more times today are we going to hear it? Halo knew he was talking for the sake of talking. Everyone had become very silent with the grim anticipation of what they might find inside of room 1306. Deputy Riger looked nervously at his superior. Could be a real fire, Dan. For the last time, Kenny, you'll call me sheriff and like it. And I very much doubt the hotel's on fire. Halo wasn't really listening to any of them. The alarm seemed distant, a mere irrelevance. She was staring at the door that separated the 4 of them from the truth about her sister. Tom tried to lure her gaze away from the door. Are you all right? He said awkwardly. Halo shook her head. Not in the least, she breathed. Without thinking, Tom gently pulled her to him. You don't have to do this, he said. Yes, I do. Yes, she does, echoed Riger. We have to ascertain. Ken, shut the hell up, said Claymark, talking over him. Look, let's not get carried away. We're not even sure we'll find anything. As far as we know, your sister might be fine and well back at home. He turned to Riger. You got that key? Ryger nodded and opened the door. The DJ had shit for brains. "Richie Valens?" Greg yelled at him. "That's right. You got the song or not, man?" The DJ shrugged. "Maybe," he said. "I've got a best of record." "It'll definitely be on that one," Greg assured him, slurring his words. "It's one of the best songs ever." No one in Ballroom B was paying the fire alarm the slightest bit of notice. Even Carrie Carson seemed happy to accept it as yet another drill or just simply a mistake. Greg was feeling happier. With every new drink April knocked back, she became significantly friendlier. He was enjoying being the shoulder to cry on. Give her another half an hour and she would almost certainly want to fuck him. Even if it was only to get back at Tom, it was still sex, wasn't it? He'd still get his dick wet. He swung his arm around her, cupping his hand over one bare shoulder. The party was in full swing. The free alcohol, which showed no signs of abating, meant that very few people could even say inhibitions, let alone have any. Alice Cooper was pumping through the PA. Something about a man behind a mask. And even the most reserved office goons were pretending they were 16 again. Ever-shifting lights painted the walls various colors. It had also occurred to Greg that after the inevitable 2-day hangover from this party, back in corporate world there would be an empty chair where Tom Sheridan once preened himself. Maybe he, Greg Spiner, might finally land the job he deserved. Life wasn't so bad. An old guy from accounts, he vaguely recalled, bumped into Greg's chair. Clutching margaritas, he apologized to Greg, grinning stupidly. Greg nodded tolerantly, and the jerk went on his way. April was yelling in his ear, "Is it me, or is this music too loud?" "Nah," he laughed. "If it's too loud, you're too old." April slapped him playfully. Greg smiled to himself. Playful slaps were very good signs. Soon he'd be playfully slapping that ass. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw some unusually fast movement. Looking over, he did a double take. Revelers were following each other all over, stumbling from the entrance doors. The music drowned out anything they were saying or yelling, but their body language spoke of mounting fear. Greg knew why that might be. He turned to April and pointed toward the panicked corner. "Look, Tom's back. He's drunk and he wants a fight. Well, it's time for a rematch." "That doesn't look like Tom," she yelled as he stalked off toward the entrance doors, rolling up his shirt sleeves. Greg pushed his way through the crowd, feeling like a car on the wrong side of a freeway. He laughed at the petrified people who bustled past him, babbling unintelligibly. "You fucking cowards," he snorted. "It's only Tom." He stopped in his tracks. He was on the crowd's far side, watching a huge man hack through a woman's throat with a glinting cleaver. The whole scene looked all the more unspeakable for being lit with garish disco colors. The blood that poured from her arterial vein flashed from red to blue to green. Smoke gushed from the killer's clothes, as though they had been on fire. Greg went to flee, but a big hand grabbed his shoulder, yanking him back to face the aggressor. "Fuck!" Before he could finish the expletive, the top half of his skull was hacked clean off. Sailing through the air, it landed on the DJ's turntable, knocking the needle aside and revolving on the vinyl. Mass Terror became Ballroom B's new soundtrack, as Richie Valens' "Oh, My Head" scratched to an abrupt halt. The smell said it all. Norwood and Penelope Thawn's sweet reeked of death. Halo was grateful that Tom stayed close to her, but she felt overwhelmed. "Here," he said, giving her a handkerchief. "Bunch it over your nose." She did, then she watched as Claymark and Ryger searched the living area, pulling out drawers and opening the closet. When the bathroom door was the only remaining possibility, Halo's stomach felt like it was filled with iron. The cops vanished into the room. Halo heard the clack, clack, clack of a shower curtain being dragged along the rail. Thin, deep sighs, a disgusted exclamation. Her flesh crawled. She remembered snapshots of her time with Shelley, growing up as sisters. Shelley telling Halo what their father had been like. Shelley assuming the maternal role when cancer took their mom. And finally Shelley having had enough of Halo and kicking her ass out. Yet nothing could change the fact that they were sisters. Blood to the end. Halo wanted to see for herself. Yet as she tried to walk, the world spun hazily around her. Very quickly, without even realizing she had fallen, she found herself looking at the ceiling. Tom's anxious, blurred face appeared for a moment, then faded to black. April was floundering in a human sea. Panic had spread through the ballroom with lightning speed. Not even Carson had attempted to squash it with one of his well-oiled speeches. He was fighting for his life with utterly selfish vigor, just like the rest of them. Most of the ballroom's floor was littered with corpses, limbs, and organs. Jason stood in the middle of the room, facing April and many others. The entrance doors far out of reach behind him. One senior executive had tried to make a run for it, but it had been cut to ribbons with the swinging cleaver. The remaining Intrax employees cowered away from this murderous intruder. A door marked "Fire Escape" was housed in one wall behind them, but it was failing to open, despite increasingly frenetic attempts to force it. People were wrenching each other aside in order to get further away from this maniac. People were tripping over heads and limbs. April felt something squelch beneath her right heel. Looking down, she glimpsed a deformed face swimming in gore. She screwed up her eyes and unleashed a pitiful squeal. Then Jason began his final attack, wading into the crowd, hacking at anyone within range. He systematically reduced Intrax employees to meat. April saw Carrie Carson raising a fistful of dollars in a last-ditch attempt to make this madman see reason, only to lose his entire arm with one swish of steel. After a second blow to the waist, Carson keeled over in two separate halves. Moving as one, the crowd urgently pushed against the fire escape door. Fists hammered on it until they were bloody. Fists hammered into the faces of fellow humans. Fists were hacked off and drifted on the river of blood, which formed a chaotic current around people's feet. All the time, those disco lights continued to flash red, blue, and green. April shrieked as Jason decapitated the woman behind her and pushed the body aside. Then, it was her turn. Jason swung the cleaver into April's stomach until it burst through her back. Then he lifted her into the air, throwing her over his right shoulder. Falling from the blade with a final screech, she hit the floor head first. Jason removed two more heads with one long sweeping arc. With his spare hand, he crushed someone's throat, making blood gurgle out over his wrist. Then something gave way at the back of the crowd. The fire escape burst outwards and less than 20 survivors piled through it, tumbling forward, driven by their own momentum, directly into a blazing inferno. Jason stopped for a long moment and watched them writhe and squirm in the flames. Then he made his way back through the human debris. After he had gone, the entrance doors swung back into place. The furnace beyond the open fire escape door was scattered with motionless, unrecognizable bodies. The alarm continued its shrill blare. The party was over. "There," said Daimler, kicking the wheel which had given him so much trouble. "Now let's get you safely locked up, Mr. Thawn. Don't suppose you like gay folk, huh? Well, there's going to be plenty where you're going." "Come on, Ed," called Van Stat. "It's heaven knows what in the morning." "I know, couldn't resist a little more taunting." Thawns smiled back. "You think you've got it all worked out, don't you, Edward Daimler?" The agent nodded, resting his arms on the window frame, looking in at his prey, like a sadistic child studying an ant in a bottle. "When it comes to you, I most certainly do. Show me those cuffs again." Thawne yanked his wrist upwards. Daimler reached in and tugged on the chain which separated the man's bounds. "Yep, you're good to go. To hell." "Have you had a good life, Ed?" Thawne asked. A creepy tone pervaded his voice, and Daimler instinctively pulled his hand back. Whether he wanted to admit it or not, this man had finally succeeded in frightening him. Daimler considered himself to be fairly hardened to the world. As far as he was normally concerned, the only thing that scared him was the thought of losing his mind, or becoming a full-blown alcoholic. People didn't usually frighten him, though. Maybe it was Thawne's vicious intellect, or those eyes, or the fact that there were probably so many more people out there like him. "I've had a great life, thanking you kindly," said Daimler, grabbing the front passenger door's handle. "Why do you ask, Mr. Thawn?" "It's just good to know," said Norwood Thawn, a strangely benign expression on his face. It was almost as though he felt sorry for Daimler. Now why would that be? Daimler opened the door and climbed inside, his eyes fixed on Thawn, anticipating some kind of move. But Thawn didn't move. He merely spoke. If it's any small consolation, Ed, much of what you theorized about me was correct. Daimler frowned, feeling puzzled and afraid. He turned to Van Stat, saw the black hole in the end of her gun, pointing at his face. Her eyes were frozen pools. Mel, what the thanks for the dinner invitation, Ed, she said brightly, but I think I'll pass. His smile died. Van Stat fired the gun, and the Lincoln filled with Ed Daimler's brains. My Life, Part 4, Finding Redemption. It took several more rungs to reach the ground than I had expected. Once at the ladder's base, I found myself standing next to Levin and Doc. Bricked-walled chamber. Piles of crates hugged the walls, presumably containing alcohol from Mr. Bueno's restaurant. A golden glow spilled in through the room's one open doorway. Beyond the arched portal, I could hear the hum of lively chatter. Levin turned to me. "You ready?" she asked. "You're sure about this?" I nodded. "And you won't let me down?" she asked. I shook my head again, getting impatient. "Okay," she said. "Let's go." We walked through the doorway, entering a surprisingly bright and plush room. Animal head trophies stared blankly down from the walls. Chandeliers were dotted along the ceiling's considerable length. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't surprised by the people here. Roughly 200 in number. They were mostly middle-aged, wore suits or ball gowns, and mostly looked like doctors, bankers, lawyers, and accountants. Our entrance attracted curious glances from only a few. The rest continued chatting while sipping at champagne glasses, which were periodically refreshed by one of the waiting staff. "These are the Redeemers," I whispered. Levin frowned beside me. "What did you expect?" she said. "I don't know. Why didn't you tell me to wear smarter clothes?" "It's unimportant. Not everybody does," is what she answered me. I looked around and saw that she was right. People in jeans and T-shirts were dotted around the room, a few of them even in their late teens. On the face of it, there appeared to be little common ground between some of these people. Levin slid her hot hand into mine. "Come, I want you to meet somebody," she said. She led me through the crowd. I exchanged knowing smiles with various members as their faces flashed by. We reached the far side of the room, where Levin found who she was looking for. Dressed immaculately, he initially stood with his back to us, talking to a tall man in a parka jacket. Levin waited patiently for a moment to catch his eye and intervene. Finally, he turned to greet her. "Ah, good evening, my dear. Levin, is it?" he said. Then he extended a hand to me. "Norwood Thawn, I presume." I took the hand and shook it firmly. "Melissa," I said. "Melissa Van Stat. Pleased to meet you." Norwood looked up from the diary in his hands. "I remember that night like it was yesterday, Melissa. Mel." We'll go ahead and finish those last 2 pages. Norwood and I hit it off so well that Levin eventually wandered away, latching on to someone else. We discussed the importance of moral values and cautiously danced around the issue of when it was correct to enforce those values. Eventually, I felt the need to establish the Redeemer's power structure. "So," I said, sipping from a champagne flute, "are you the head of the Redeemers?" "Dear me, no," laughed Norwood. "For one thing, you should know that this isn't the movement's only chapter. We're fast becoming worldwide, all entirely underground, naturalment." He paused to politely acknowledge a passing member, then resumed his flow. "If there is a leader in this group, though, it's a lady named Penelope. She coordinated our first get-togethers. Of late, she has also become my fiancée. We are to be married." "Congratulations," I told Norwood with a sincerity I didn't honestly feel. Ever since the man's eyes locked with mine, I had been bewitched by his handsome presence. It was wrong of me, but I couldn't seem to help it. You shall have to meet her when she arrives. I'm sure she would love to see a new recruit." The conversation went on, and I revealed that I was about to leave town and undergo FBI training at Quantico, Virginia. "Really?" Norwood had told me, arching an eyebrow. His face darkened a shade. For a moment there I thought he was about to call someone over to have me forcibly ejected from the premises. "Levin didn't mention that. So you'll either be a valuable ally to us or our worst enemy, My head felt light from the champagne. "Oh, believe me," I said. "If I ever can help you or any of this order, I will. We're thinking very much on the same page." Norwood chewed this over and nodded. He was smiling again. "To unity," he said, raising his glass to clink mine. "To unity." "So, tell me something, Melissa. Whatever happened to Levin?" "Well, go ahead and finish the last paragraph, Norwood. We've got time." "A week later, Levin committed suicide. I found the body in her apartment, several days after she died. She had overdosed on pills and the lion's share of a whiskey bottle. I was shocked until I prized the scrawled suicide note from her rigid right hand. 'Can't stop feelings for other women,' it read, 'especially male. This is against everything which I believe. If I can't stop this unclean lust within myself, then I must stop everything.' And so she did, a righteous and noble act. I went on to Quantico, feeling highly subversive as I wormed my way through the course. Sure, they checked my history, but there was nothing untoward to be found. Apart from a few traumas, my mother going missing and never being found, a school friend dying during an ill-advised adventure. So long as I passed all the tests and said the right things, there was no way they could see me as anything other than a model applicant. That's the beautiful thing about the human mind. You can keep things hidden inside, which no one else can access. My mask remained firmly in place." Norwood closed the diary and handed it back to Melissa. Okay, this has been chapters 20 and 21 and part 4 of Melissa's diary. I didn't see that swerve coming. I honestly believed this whole time that it was Norwood's diary or journal. So when that happened, that caught me off guard. But luckily it was Norwood reading Melissa's journal, which made sense with the accents. That caught me off guard, So yeah. Anyways, let's go over tonight's kill count. In the 2 chapters we did tonight, there was a lot of death. So let's recap. Rest in peace, cook in training, Kelser. Jason took a knife and ran it through his forehead. Alright, next up on the chopping block, rest in peace, Leah, who became a human dagger target for Jason. And what kind of name is Leah for a guy? Maybe that's why Jason did it. Your name is a girl's name. Rest in peace, Skipper, the man who was used as bait and got the cold shoulder from Jason in the freezer. Rest in peace, Waylon's cocaine high. He didn't even get to enjoy it very long. Rest in peace, Bluestone, dying from a literal splitting headache. Rest in peace, most of the rest of Bluestone's team. They went up in flames and died in a blaze of gory. Sorry about the pun. Rest in peace, Greg. The man died like he lived, running his mouth and writing checks with his mouth that his ass could not cash, and then just spinning in place doing nothing. But hey, at least the DJ played his request song. Greg stayed on top of it. Rest in peace, N-Trax Company. So many people met their end tonight, this company is no more. There's no way. And the ones that didn't get dismembered during Jason's lethal batting practice were literally fired from their job. Rest in peace, April. Damn it, girl. What a night. Boyfriend dumps you. You let yourself get drunk enough that you're gonna fuck Greg, and then Jason runs his machete through you. Might be a good time to quit drinking. And finally, rest in peace, Ed Daimler, a man who learned tonight that hell hath no fury like a plot twist. And he should have opted for the plot armor warranty. Okay, folks, I'll be back tomorrow with some more Hate Kill repeats. Until then, this has been your friendly neighborhood 80s slasher librarian saying thanks for listening, and have a great night, everybody.